Karen, thank you so much for joining me, grabbing a coffee, because I know you're incredibly busy, and a pretty dramatic weekend as well. For football managers, the girls put you through it a bit, didn't they? 4-0 up at half-time, 4-3, but 3 valuable points on the road. How was it, travelling back from Sunderland?
Do you know what? It was a game of just 2 halves, really. I thought first half we was excellent, executed the game plan to the T. Was like pleasantly surprised to go in at 4-0, but I think like we knew that Sunderland were always going to be a good side, so we couldn't take our foot off the gas. And I said at half time, like, they're going to have to change something. They're going to have to change personnel. They're going to have to change formations, and they did. And lo and behold, we conceded quite early on, and then put us under pressure. Thankfully, we sort of rode out some mad momentums that shifted in their favour. But no, the bottom line is we come back to London with 3 points, and so we was really pleased with that. And then obviously back at the training ground today.
Well, it always feels important, doesn't it? Because to end before an international break on a bit of a high, and the women's football calendar works in a very different way to the men's game. So supporters watching this are probably thinking, oh, there's a fair few games to go, but there's not. There's one more home game at the Valley. So I guess it gets to that point where you begin to reflect on the season that's been, and another really, really strong campaign for the team. But in terms of the Barclays Women's Championship as the second tier of the women's football period, do you think this has been the most competitive yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, like, you've seen like Newcastle coming into the league this season, Birmingham, London City, some teams that have really invested heavily. And have really made it competitive. I think it's probably been the most competitive I've seen it, and I think you've seen that with sort of back end of the season, how many teams are still sort of in and around it, whereas like the last couple of seasons it was like maybe 1 or 2. But it looks like it's going to go down to the wire, which is exciting for the neutrals, but not so much when you're in it on a day-to-day basis.
But you must be so pleased again that given the way that the standards increase, the investment increases, the competition grows stronger, that each season in your charge, the league position has finished stronger and stronger, and the girls are still in with a shout. It's yourselves, London City and Birmingham, big names there, lots of investment going on. But what's the mood like in the group? Is there kind of a steely focus on just making sure that they're in it until the very, very last kick?
Yeah, I think that was something that we really sort of spoke about come Christmas. So we had a really strong start at the start of the league, at the start of the season.
Go. The flat whites are in, thank you. And look, Karen, I don't want to embarrass you here, but I know that recently we couldn't light the candle for you, but we had to acknowledge. I hope you don't mind a bit of lemon drizzle. No. Thank you so much, guys.
That's lovely. Thank you
4
very
years.
much.
I wanted to make that point. Congratulations.
Appreciate
because
that.
Being a football manager is not easy, and for you in particular, when you were appointed at the football club 4 years ago, I'm sure it feels like a long time given how much work you've accomplished. You were responsible for moving us into a part-time model, into a full-time model, and you did that seamlessly, and as we were just talking about there, stronger and stronger each season. When you hit that 4-year marker, did you get a chance to really appreciate all that you've accomplished?
I don't think you really get a chance to really reflect until the end of the season, because it is just relentless. And I think at the end of the season, you have a moment to sit, and when you're on the beach reading your book or just having that moment, it's like, what have we achieved? Fantastic, but then what do we need to do next? So you're always looking like, how can we be better? What do we need to do to make next season even better than this season? And I've always been a person that likes a project, that grows with a project. And I've been very loyal, and that's how I think you need time to build something, and for people to come with you along the journey. And thankfully, I've been able to bring a lot of those players and staff along the journey in the last 4 years, and incredibly proud of what we've achieved so far in that 4-year period.
I love that you use the word loyalty, because as you mentioned there, your recruitment has been so strong over the past 4 years. The loyalty of the players, the staff that you've brought in those off the pitch roles, which sometimes can go a little bit unnoticed but are valuable to your preparation for the squad. But I suppose that loyalty to the football club that you played for, you know, a Hall of Famer, 150 appearances. When you were approached to take on the Charlton Athletic project, did the fact that you know the DNA so well, was that part of the pull? Because you'd spent such a long time at Spurs and done such an incredible job within the WSL as well. Did it feel like a risk, or did it feel like kind of coming home? What was it like back then?
It's an interesting one because it just came from nowhere really, and it was someone that obviously Thomas came in, and there was obviously a new way of working. They wanted to bring the women's in-house, which was exciting, and obviously I got a firm support mechanism for Charlton, and I've always, like, when I played for Charlton, we had an unbelievable run and done really well. Then they went for a bit of a crazy time. The women's team sort of came out of the main fold and had to rebuild again. So for me personally, I think it was an opportunity after Spurs to come into a role where it was going to be me as the head coach taking on this responsibility and driving a new project, and I was excited to do that. And you have to have energy to be able to drive a project and see it through, and I think we've been able to do that. And like I said, I've had some fantastic support staff, like Ratish has been with me from minute one, who's been like the rock for me. He really sort of drives me, supports me, and unbelievable person to work with. And then just like we built a team of people around the team on the pitch, and I think that's so important. Even going forward, players come and go, but the staff, if you can keep a staff group together, I think that's so valuable, because you want to come to work and you've got each other's backs, you know how each other works, you know what strengths and weaknesses we all bring, and that is the ingredients to really supporting and helping these players perform on a day-to-day basis.
And in the spell of your career, transitioning from a player into a coach, the head coach manager's role, the women's game has completely transformed. I imagine there's parts where the preparation you see your first team players get that are unrecognisable to the training regime that you used to play under. But when you joined Charlton, I was just curious to know, were there any sort of non-negotiables that you had in terms of, I need to know from the ownership above me that X, Y and Z will be delivered? Because whether we like it or not, there has been progress, but sometimes lip service gets played to the women's game a bit. So what were those key points for you that were like, right, I know this is going to be a really, really good partnership between me and the football club?
Yeah, it was really interesting because obviously spoke to the owner that was in post previously, who brought me in, and it was always a question of like, was our values and our expectation aligned? Because I needed to know that we was all going in the same direction, and we was, and the remit was to try and get Charlton to the top division to play against the best teams, and I was excited for that challenge. I knew it was going to be tough, but it was something that we were working towards, and that's something that I will continue to keep doing. But as you can appreciate, obviously Charlton as a club, the men's team have probably had a bit of a difficult period. This is probably the most exciting time since I've been at Charlton. The men are in an unbelievable place. I think there's a lot of great stuff that's happening, and the league position. So there's a lot of excitement around the club, and the women's team as well now is in the same sort of era as the men. We're both sitting in really good positions.
It's about time the boys caught up, Karen, because you've been doing this season in, season out.
I'm trying, and I'm really excited and hopeful that the men can keep doing what they're doing, because I think that drives the club, it drives the ambition, and the ownership now that's in place. I think there's a real passion for both the men and the women to keep striving to be the best they can, and so that's still exciting for me, and still part of our remit to take us in a positive direction.
I think that'll be music to supporters' ears as well, because for those that sort of acknowledge that the men's and women's game is different, you just need, we've spoke about the footballing calendar is very different. And we're having a coffee now, and it's great to get an insight into what it's like to be a head coach. But I suppose there's only one other person really in the training ground that also knows what it's like to be in your position, and that is Nathan Jones. Do you guys have a good relationship? Is he someone that, again, if you just want an ear or a voice outside of the culture that you've built around the women's team, is he someone that you kind of rely on? I know he's come to watch a few games and has always spoken really highly of the team. Yeah,
no, obviously our schedules, we have schedules at the training ground that sometimes we do see each other. We don't have regular catch-ups because, like I said, the schedules are very different. But when we do get the chance, we're always able to have a conversation. We always ask each other, we always follow each other's results. And we both want, I think, and I believe, the best for this football club. And we're both very passionate, and we're both giving absolutely everything. And the ultimate thing is you do your best. And you can see him doing his best on a daily basis. You can see, and that then has that effect on everyone else around you. So no, I do get to speak to him on the odd occasion, and like I said, he's been to a couple of our games. He's come down to see us in the changing room to say good luck, and so you can see that connection, which is nice to see.
The term kind of one club gets used a lot, but I do think there is a strength to it, isn't there, in terms of having two really successful senior sides that motivate people to come down to the Valley and watch, inspire the next generation of fans. And one of the brilliant things at the start of this season was getting to call the Valley home, which must have felt such a gratifying thing for you. And it's part of the future long term. The fans and that part of the club is growing week in, week out, isn't it? How has it been adapting to playing in a stadium like that?
Yeah, like the players, I always talk about players playing in big stadiums and having the opportunity to have the resources that we do now. The biggest challenge is for the women's game to catch up with the supporters, and now the question marks are the stadiums probably too big, and that's where you lose maybe the atmosphere. But even we've come to the Valley this season, we've had a reasonable turnout. Obviously we would always want to encourage more, but I think you can hear the fans, and that's only not even a quarter of it filled. So what would it feel like if we was to have it half filled? But again, it comes back down to that question: are the stadiums too big at this moment in time? You look at obviously the top teams that are selling out. Okay, it's taken Arsenal and Chelsea and Man City to fill out big stadiums a long time. They've been at the top of their game. But how do we really work hard to encourage more fans? And because it's a different type of fan that comes to games. A lot of the women's fans, and we've found this over the years, and with my experiences, that a lot of fans follow individual players, as well as obviously the growing support of fans within the club. A lot of women come in with children, a lot of grandparents.
So it's a really
come
nice
in.
family feel, I think, at women's games.
Yeah, so it's the fan base is growing, and I think us as Charlton need to continue to do that. It will all come back down to the product on the pitch and how successful you are. And I think we've this season have done a lot of work with fan engagement to make the match day experience enjoyable, and you can really see the team working behind the scenes, trying to come up with all these ideas to really encourage new people to come. So no, it's going to take time, but it's going in the right direction.
Cam, do you think a little bit of patience is needed? Because if we look at the women's game, and the England Lionesses winning the Euros caused this absolutely gigantic catalytic impact, everything's going up. But then, of course, it's going to simmer a little bit. And the reality of the situation is that women's football is growing. And that sometimes takes a little bit of time. And it's a brilliant legacy from winning the Euros, but you sometimes think it kind of skewers expectations. People think, oh, the women's team are playing at the Valley, like it should be sold out because... But actually, like, give it time, give it 5 years, 10 years. Where do you sort of stand on where we're at, sort of as a game as a whole?
Yeah, you've only got to look at women. We've only been playing for 55 years. We've only been really allowed.
People don't realise that the FA banned it for however many decades.
And that's the thing. So we've got a lot of catching up to do. But I think the England women's team winning the Euros was fantastic, and it really does give everyone that boost. I think there's a lot more initiatives within schools now where there's more girls than ever before playing at a very younger age. So the level of opportunities that these younger girls are playing. So by the time they get to 14, 15, 16, they're good players now. There's more resources involved, so they're getting more opportunities to be the best version and the best players. You've then got role models that you can now see and feel and believe that you can be. So it's now not a dream, it's like the reality. But again, it is going to take time, and we just have to be patient. But we also need to ride the wave and keep riding it, and make the most of it, because women's game isn't going anywhere. It's only going to get stronger, and more people that realise and get involved in that. There is a significant investment that there is going to be benefits in the long term, but in the short term, some people have probably just got to realise that and realise that the women's game isn't going anywhere, and it's only going to get bigger and better.
It's interesting you made the point about football in schools, because I'm really fortunate to spend some time with your first team players who, as part of their work for the football club, we go out to schools. And firstly, I love the fact I do the same with the men's team, that the pupils themselves get equally excited whether I'm with the men's team or the women's team. And I just love that, because that shows an incredible amount of how the perceptions change. But I also, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but did you get scouted for your first proper senior team when you were 18? Is that right? So think then of all the years of progress that you potentially missed out on, that players now get. Like, the opportunities are just so exciting. I wanted to ask you, the team the team train at Sparrows Lane, play at the Valley. But if there was one element that perhaps you could, on your wish list, get a bit more resource and support in to help the team evolve on its next chapter, what would that kind of support look like? What kind of pieces do we need to add to our jigsaw, do you think?
I think there's always room for improvement, and every year we just got to keep looking at how we can improve. Like, there's some... Charlton as a club is I always call it organically growing. So the next thing is, yes, we played at the Valley this year. We managed to strengthen our staffing unit. I think what needs to happen as well is to really focus on the younger ones as well, like the academy, to try and really gain a fantastic pipeline, because we have had some really good success stories. Especially not even this weekend, like Gloria came through from the PGA, which is only 2 years up and running. We've had Mary, who signed her first professional contract, who come from the academy. So there is those players there. I think just more investment and more really looking at that and how we can grow our own players, because the men's academy has been doing it for years and been doing it really successfully, and I think that's something that Charlton, especially when they're in the pool of London, when you've got the big names of Chelsea and Arsenal, we probably have to be a little bit more creative and have a different way. So I think that could be something that we can improve. And obviously just continue to do what we're doing. We're in a good place, and like I said, I think financially you always want more as a manager, always, and I will always keep pushing, because that's the way that the game's going. So sometimes you need to push. You might get the answers that you want. Sometimes you'll get the answers you don't want, and that's what you need to do as a manager, to try and work your way through. But the bottom line is, for me this season, is to try and keep hold of as many of the key players this year and take them on the next leg of the journey. And if we can do that with some homegrown players as well, with a couple of new additions, I think we'll be in a good place.
If I could give you a magic wand, a fully funded magic wand, and you could make one change to the women's game, it doesn't even have to be Charlton specific, but one thing that, as we're at this interesting point for the women's game nationally, internationally and so on, what change would you make, or what thing would you introduce?
It's a really, really tough question.
Especially because it's a fully funded magic wand, Karen.
It's a fully funded magic wand. That would be a really difficult one, because I think where the game is, it's in a good place. There needs to continue to be considerable investment not only on the playing side but on the side behind it.
Yeah.
So all the resources, and then the element of the younger players getting exposed to a lot more education, being looked after, educating them to know what it's like to be a professional football player. I think the Academy Boys setup has that installed, and I think what we need to do is to make sure that all these players are fully educated to understand what it is to be a professional football player. And I think as the game develops and keeps revolving and the pressure gets greater, that education piece, I'm a big firm believer of, like, we talk about the technical and the tactical element of players, but it's always about the mental side of the game, and women and girls are different, and they need psychological support as well as the men's teams do. However, I'm a big believer that having that sort of element of understanding mental pressure, how to deal with that, is really, really important for the women's game. I'm reading a book. I've just read a book at the moment that's the next generation, and it's all about how people think now, the younger generation, to what they were when I was young, growing up. So it's like, how do we evolve and how do we look after them to help them perform in a different world with a lot more pressure, a lot more social media accessibility, which I think is a big challenge.
That's such an interesting part of your job as well, because I guess in some circumstances you're dealing with people, you know, those on the board and that kind of managing up of people that are older than you. Then you've got players that are, you know, such a variety of different ages as well. You have to be able to handle so many different people. You mentioned reading there. Is that a source for you, like away from the training ground, that you use? Because I know you've got every coaching qualification going, but any good coach, the learning never stops, right? So is that something you enjoy doing, like podcast reading and so on? Any other recommendations we can take away?
Yeah, no, I'm just at the moment finishing my pro license, so I'm just getting to the end of that. It's been an 18-month project, and I've found that really enjoyable, challenging, but really enjoyable. Lots of opportunity to learn within that, and I've had to do a bit of a research project and for my end project, and it's about how can staff support players to become effective leaders. So it's looking at how the game has changed and how staff teams have got bigger, more resources, and how do we help these players become better leaders. So I think that's why I've been doing a little bit more reading. But
has it felt like going back to school?
Yes,
you had coursework
yes,
and like on top of managing.
So you can imagine I'm quite stressed with it all.
Yeah, needing lots of coffee, no doubt, I imagine.
Loads of coffee, and this coffee is very nice. And the lemon drizzle cake is probably going to be as good, not as good as Kira Skills. Kira Skills makes, she makes some. She makes cakes on a Tuesday. So since January, she comes in on a Tuesday morning, and you either have lemon drizzle cake or it's like a banana cake.
Right, Karen, next time I interview you, it will be on a Tuesday morning at the
you're more than welcome to come down and try Kira's baking skills.
Oh, I'm going to have to tap that up for sure. I'm really conscious of your time, but I think it would be really remiss of me, given that it's coming up towards a significant anniversary for the football club, 20 years since you were a part of the FA Cup winning team. It's almost like two bookmarks, really, isn't it? Like, do you ever think back to when you see yourself wearing the kit in Charlton to now you're managing the team? That must just be something you're so proud of, to have that lineage.
Yeah, it is an honour. I do feel proud and privileged. I think I've worked really hard to get to where I've got to. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of challenges. As a player, I enjoyed every single minute with Charlton. There were some unbelievable highs. And then now as a manager, taking Charlton into this league, being full-time, having the opportunity to create a legacy for the women's team is really something that's important to me, and I feel very honoured to be doing it. It's hard work, and every day is a challenge and an opportunity to learn. But you've got to take stock of like all the highs and enjoy those moments. And I think always when you're playing an FA Cup, even when you're managing as a manager, I always do remember that final when we won. And
you've been involved in a fair few. Again, it was such a brilliant time for the football club, but that was the 1-0 win against Everton was when you finally got your hands on the silverware.
And that felt amazing. It was something that will live with me for a long time. And my family was there. We'd had a couple of disappointments before, but we felt ready in this game, and I think the celebrations at the end, we was in the change room, it got some unbelievable characters. That we all let our hair down because we'd worked so hard for that moment. So I look at these players now and I want to experience that with them. I want them to experience how I felt, because it is a moment that will live with you forever.
Yeah. And also, on a personal note, I remember growing up, my granddad was a massive Charlton Athletic supporter, and it felt like every year, once a year, because that was back in the day, the only game of women's football that was on TV was the Women's FA Cup final, and my granddad would sit me down, the red and white ribbons in the hair, and we would watch your team play. So even then, I never got on to play football because the opportunities were limited. But you obviously planted a seed in my head that football was something that perhaps I could go on and work in and so on. So it's incredible to think that in that that spell, you've inspired so many different people. From little Charlotte watching on TV when you were a player, to perhaps the boys and girls that come and watch you, and you generously give them a couple of minutes of your time after a win, after a draw, after a loss. I know you do it all the time. Final sort of question then: do you find yourself with your players now? Is there one sort of coaching line that maybe someone has said to you, or you've read it, that you find yourself frequently saying to the girls? Is there any sort of familiarity of a tip or advice you give them?
It's just come in, be the best version of yourself, and embrace and enjoy every single moment, because the season goes like that. When you're in it, you feel like you're on a hamster wheel and you just want to get off, but actually it goes so quick, and what everyone needs to do is really embrace and enjoy every moment. And you've got to enjoy the highs and lows, because football is going to take you into those moments, and you've just got to try and find a neutral and just enjoy it, and not get too low, not get too high. And I just say, just bring your best version, and always try and do your best, and your best will always be good enough.
So fitting that the final words, be the best version of ourselves, mirrors exactly what I hear from Nathan Jones pretty much week in, week out, and it sums up how unified and together our football club is at the moment. And it is, just like you mentioned, such an exciting time to be a part of the football club. Final home game at the Valley, Newcastle on Sunday the 20th of April, 12 p.m. kickoff. I'm going to certainly do my best to be there, and it'd be brilliant if we could get more and more addicts down and make it a real high note to end on. Karen, thank you so much for your time.
No worries, thank you.